Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey, I'm Rebekah Valentine. I'm a staff writer with gamesindustry.biz, and I am here to talk at length about how much I love Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings, and The Lost Ocean. This is a game that I don't get to talk about very often because it is a GameCube game, and some people are down on the GameCube. And also, I feel like it isn't super well known. It's kind of beloved by a few, but I don't hear it talked about as often as, kind of the staples of the GameCube, like Super Smash Bros. Melee, Animal Crossing, and a few others. So Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, or just Baten Kaitos, is a 2003 GameCube RPG. It was made by Monolith Soft and Tri-Crescendo. Tri-Crescendo is a co-development studio that has more recently worked on games like Mario Sports Superstars, Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U, Tales of Berseria, Tales of Cestiria, games like that. And then Monolith Soft you probably know from like Xenoblade or like co-development on Breath of the Wild or things like that. So Baten Kaitos was originally made to specifically be, they wanted another like big RPG on the GameCube because the GameCube didn't have a ton of really specific RPGs. And the game came out and it was critically well received, but it didn't sell very well. And then it still got it got a sequel, but it was actually a prequel called Baten Kaitos Origins, which was also on the GameCube, and that got a similar reception. There was a DS game planned that never came out, and that's basically Baten Kaitos. Like, it never really went anywhere. It never really went any further, despite being honestly a really fantastic game. Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean is the one I want to talk about, even though Baten Kaitos Origins is fantastic in many of its own ways. So Baten Kaitos is an RPG with like card game elements of sorts. It centers around these magnets, which they're these cards that can be filled with the essence of whatever you want in the game. And it works as both a battle mechanic and like a regular inventory system. So for battles, you collect battle magnets, like you just pick them up like items, whatever, like from chests or boxes or stores or whatever. But the battle magnets they'll have spells, they'll have weapons, they'll have healing items and whatever contained inside. And you build decks for each character in your party. Your party can have 3 members at a time. You end up with 6 members total and you shuffle them around. But you have 3 members at a time. You build a deck for each character, and your deck, the size of your deck, will grow as you proceed through the course of the game. So you build out these decks, and then in battle, you draw a hand from your shuffled deck, and then on your turn, you can play cards from it, and that's how you fight. And so you'll get cards like Callus, the main character, will have swords. That's mainly what he uses, so you draw a card for a sword, you attack with a sword. And every turn, you have a certain amount of cards that you can play that turn, and a certain amount of time to play them. And then you also, when someone's attacking you, you get a chance to play defensive cards like shields and stuff. As the game goes on, you're able to play more cards per turn, but you also start getting a time limit in which to play those cards. So as the game goes on, battles progressively get more and more fast-paced until you really only have a couple seconds to decide what you're going to do. It ends up being really cool and really fast-paced. Every character has kind of their own things that they use. So like Callus, like I said, uses swords. Shella is the second character that you meet, is a mage. She uses magic attacks. My favorite character, Liud, attacks with musical instruments, which is really cool. But then there's also cards that kind of have universal applications. So like, for instance, a Magnus with bananas can be used as a healing item, and that can be used by anyone in the party. Like, you can put it in whoever's deck, they can all use it. So that's kind of like the basics of battles, but then there's also magnets that aren't for battles. You have this set of blank magnets that you get at the beginning of the game. You're given more as the game goes on, and you can use them to capture the essence of items you come across. So like in the first town, there's a bunch of barrels of apples. You can use a blank magnets to capture an apple, and then if you run into a character later on who wants an apple, you can give it to them out of your inventory like that. It can be used to solve puzzles. There's a lot of puzzles involving fire or clouds where you have to capture fire or clouds and use them to solve puzzles. But the really cool thing, and the thing that I love about Baten Kaitos, is because there's this idea that you're actually picking up these items and carrying them around with you, they're affected by time. So, for instance, if you get a bunch of unripened bananas, like green bananas, you can use them as a battle magnets, and you can, like, I guess, throw them at the enemy as, like, a weapon, and they'll do, like, a very small, pathetic amount of damage. Like, it's not really worth having around. But if you, like, sit around for a couple hours or play the game for a couple hours with them in your inventory, they'll eventually ripen, and then they can be used as a healing item. But then if you play for a few more hours, they'll rot, and then you'll have rotten bananas, and they'll do damage again. And there's so many items in the game like that. There's an item, I think, I don't remember the exact specifics of it, but there's a person who does a speed run of all Magnus for Baten Kaitos, and it takes like hundreds of hours because there's one Magnus. Then in order to get it, you have to age it for like hundreds of hours to turn it into like shampoo or something. It's very funny. But aging items is necessary to solve some puzzles or to obtain certain items. And it's a really cool mechanic. Like some of the quests in the game will involve holding on to something for a long period of time as you play. And it's a meaty RPG. So like there's plenty of time to do this. But it's really cool to like, open your inventory and see stuff in it and they're like, wait, where did this come from? How did I get this? And you realize, oh, I got this because this other thing turned into this. And so you have to kind of like keep an eye on your decks and an eye on your inventory. Even if you have a deck you're comfortable with, you might open it and start using it in battle and realize, oh, that really good healing item I have turned into something else. Now I can't use it. And it's really cool because it constantly asks you to keep an eye on your items and also constantly be shuffling your items or thinking about, okay, how can I get this cool thing? You can also combine items, like Battle Magnus can be combined. So like you can use a cucumber and a honey in battle, and if you use them on the same turn next to each other, they'll create a honeydew melon. It's a bigger healing item than either of the other two. So that's the Magnus system. That's a little bit overcomplicated, but I love it because then they iterate on it further in Baten Kaitos Origins. I won't get into that, but it's really cool. The other thing about Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean that's really cool is you don't actually, the main character I said is Callus, you don't actually play as Callus. You play as a guardian spirit. You're this guardian spirit that's kind of like fourth wall breaking character who's bonded to Callus for most of the game. Callus and sometimes the others in your party will directly address you as the player, and you can select options for how to respond to them. And when you're bonded to Callus, if you respond kind of in a supportive way of the things that he wants to do, your bond grows and you'll get like bonuses in battle and stuff. But what I think, and I'm actually going to spoil the game a little bit here, so and apologies, this is like a game from 2003. You tend to forget that you're playing as a guardian spirit because the game does this really cool thing. It opens, there's like a dreamlike opening sequence, then you awaken as Callus. You're in a small village called Sebelrai. Callus says he was attacked by rock cats, and you seem to have lost you, the guardian spirit, seem to have lost your memory. Callus has not lost his memory. He's like, oh yeah, we were attacked by rock cats, it's fine. And you're journeying with Callus on this mission to get revenge. His grandfather and brother were killed before the events of the game by this man named Giacomo, and Callus wants revenge on Giacomo. You're there to support him in this. You very quickly meet this young woman named Shella, who's pursuing something called the End Magnus. It's these 5 pieces of this long dead god that are going to be used to reawaken the god and cause terrible destruction. It's a very RPG plot. They're scattered across the 5 floating continents of the world. Shella's after these End Magnus because she wants to keep them out of the hands of an evil empire. It's very standard RPG. Callus ends up reluctantly joining her because Giacomo's working for the Empire, and it lines up with his quest for revenge. So they start working together. You get other party members. You get a deserter from the Empire, Liud. You get a fisherman named Gabari, a mercenary named Savina, and this masked person named Mizuti. So that's your party. But here's where the spoilers come in, and this is one of the things that just blew my mind when I first played Baten Kaitos. So you do a very RPG plot. Like you go from continent to continent. You secure these End Magnus, keep them out of the hands of the Empire. There's a point where all of a sudden everything just goes to pot, and the Empire takes all the End Magnus. It's like a race to get the very, very last one. You face off in this like volcano-like area. The Emperor shows up. There's a big fight. And then in the middle of the fight, Callus betrays everybody. The main character, the character that you are not the main character. You're his guardian spirit, but you sort of trick yourself into thinking over time, oh yeah, I'm Callus. I'm playing as Callus. You're not playing as Callus. Callus betrays the player. This whole time, Callus has actually been working for the Empire because they have these other things he wants. There's a whole long thing. But he ends up betraying everybody, and he gets like this ultimate power or whatever. He's able to exact his revenge, all this other stuff, and you, the guardian spirit, are turned loose. The reason why you had no memory at the beginning of the game is because Callus wiped your memory after making the deal with the Empire to work for them. And so he's been tricking you the whole time, and it's incredible, and you're like just kind of sent off into the ether, and the whole party is defeated, and it's just this disaster. And then you wake up because you hear Shella, the secondary main character, calling to you, and you go to her and you join up with her. And you help her, free herself from her captivity. She goes off on a journey to rescue the other party members, and you're bonded with Shella for a period of time. And I won't go any further than that, but there's a whole second half of the game that is basically about sort of putting your party back together, figuring out what you can do about Callus and figuring out how you're going to stop the Empire now that they've, got all this power and done all this ridiculous stuff. But it was so cool to me that the main character of a game could betray the player like that. Like, I remember playing this as a kid. It just blew my mind that they would break the fourth wall like that. So that's like the main thing I love about Baten Kaitos. It's also just a gorgeous game. There's really pretty backgrounds. There's some really interesting puzzles and side quests. There's multiple quests that span the whole game. There's one where you have to complete this gorgeous map of the stars. There's one where you have to find a bunch of animals around the world. They're all really cute, like pun named animals. There's one that involves finding all of a man's family members because he's on his deathbed and he wants to die surrounded by his family. Everybody in your party has a character quest towards the end of the game that fleshes out their individual stories and gives them like their powerful finisher moves. There's this whole continent that's based on illusions. It's got a village made of sweets. It's got a storybook village. It's got a mirror maze. It's got this giant MC Escher style like garden. It's all just really pretty and really cool looking. Really, I mean, there's like, there's things you can criticize in Baten Kaitos. I think the main one that I always hear criticized is honestly, it's the voice acting is so bad. It's the voice acting in this game is not good. It's very weird. There's a trailer on YouTube. The game has a really cool like cinematic intro that plays every time you load up the game, and there's a version of that intro on YouTube that has completely different voice actors that are honestly way better, and it's kind of weird because it makes you wonder like, okay, what happened to that cast? Where did they go? But yeah, the Baten Kaitos Origins fixed a lot of the voice acting issues, but Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean has some just real weird choices, especially for the characters that are kids. The kid voice acting is bizarre. The last thing that I really want to gush about is the music in Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean, and Origins is done by Motoi Sakuraba, who you're probably aware of from games like Dark Souls and Golden Sun and a bunch of the Tales games. He's just one of the industry's probably most prolific composers. He's done so much, and I think Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean is one of his best soundtracks. It is absolutely stunning. These beautiful, like, peaceful melodies in some of the villages, these just big sweeping themes for some of the bigger locations. The battle themes are incredible. Like, one of them is a rap, which is fantastic. It's Chaotic Dance is so good. It's a wonderful way to, if you like his music and you want to see like a pretty broad range of what he's capable of doing, I think Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean is one of the games that showcases his, capabilities, the breadth of them most fully. And so that's a soundtrack that's absolutely worth looking up. I wish it was on Spotify. But yeah, so that's, I've just now, gushed for 12 minutes about Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings and the Lost Ocean. I haven't played it for years, but, I've got it gathering dust on a shelf with my GameCube, and I would love to go back to it sometime because it's absolutely a delight. It's got the very traditional RPG roots, but exactly enough twist and exactly enough like interesting weird systems that I think it really makes it stand out, and even though I've just like totally spoiled the mid-game twist for you, it's still really, really good, and I love how it's executed, and I love how the characters react to it. It's just honestly excellent if you can get past the voice acting, which you totally can because it's a great game. So yeah, if you've got a GameCube, dust it off and pick up Baten Kaitos, and keep your fingers crossed with me that someday Monolith Soft or someone pulls that IP out and gives us a sequel. But yeah, whether or not that happens, happy gaming.
Can you believe we've been friends for 7 years?
And it all started because I compared you to Alana the Lioness.
Tamara Pierce really set the tone of our friendship.
A love of magic,
Briar Moss,
fantasy,
Briar Moss,
powerful women, and of course,
Briar Moss. I'm Anna.
And I'm MJ.
And we invite you to join our Circle of Friendship,
where we do a chapter-by-chapter deep dive into the Circle of Magic series by Tamara Pierce.
We answer important questions like, how does Moonstream let certain dedicates take care of children?
Can you imagine anyone else but Mandy Patinkin playing Nico?
Knives, Briar?
And
knives?
Join us every other Monday at cofpodcast.libsyn.com or wherever you download podcasts.
But seriously, knives?
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.